Hi guys, thanks for joining us. I'm here with Sam Roberts today. Thanks for joining me, Sam.
Nice to see you.
Really
Thanks
appreciate
for having
it.
me on.
Great. So, in May, you released this album, Collider. Can you give us a little bit of like a catch up? What's happened since May when you released this? How are things going?
It's a little bit blurry at this point. You know, we haven't had that long break where we can kind of make sense of everything. That's what every tour does to you. It seems like it tends to blend days into each other. It's hard to distinguish what the hell is actually going on. But we've just been on the road, and that's the nature of being in a band. Mm-hmm. Cool. As you go from this really private, very contained environment, like, you know, in my case, taking it from the basement where I was writing songs to our little rehearsal studio where we kind of put them all together, then to the studio. But all of that is it's just us, you know, cool. The five of us. And then all of a sudden, it becomes this public. Yeah. It's sort of launched into the public domain, and now you're on stage every day. You're talking about something that you didn't really think about in terms of language even at all, you know? And now you're forced to sort of reevaluate what it is that it means to you, and to, again, put something into words that you don't, to me it's music, you know? Right. And all of a sudden I have to describe it. So I've been in that mindset for the last 6 months or so, you know. So. Cool.
Now we're taking it back a step. You said that when you recorded this in Chicago, right? Did recording this album in a city that is historically pretty connected to the blues, did that kind of play sort of a role in the way that this turned out at all?
I'm sure it did, like not in an overt sense, but definitely just being in Chicago, being in a place that has a really rich, deep musical legacy. And you meet a lot of musicians, you meet a lot of people who have had the same types of experiences as you have, and you tend to feed off of that. So it's definitely a place that, I'm glad that we went there. I'm glad that we left Montreal and went somewhere else and sort of peeled ourselves away from the comforts of home. And I guess, I had to face a new place, an unfamiliar place, right? And draw from that when it comes to, it's more about what kind of mindset you show up in the studio with every morning. Are you feeling really comfortable and at ease with everything? Because that'll make you play one way. Or are you feeling challenged? Right. Are you feeling sort of like you have to, come to grips with a new place like Chicago? Sure. And that puts you in a completely different frame of mind when you sit down with your guitar, or you got a mic in front of you and you're going to sing, and you tend to interpret the music differently. So I really find that it's a valuable part of the record making process, is to sort of push yourself into unfamiliar waters and see what that brings to it. And
I think that kind of came through on the record too. Like when I was listening to it, it was hard to kind of, you could tell that it was a Sam Roberts album, but there had been some kind of evolution, some kind of change that happened with the dynamic.
I mean, it's not that we don't have conversations about what we would like to be doing or what we'd like to do next. And yet, when you sit down to write songs, you tend to throw all of that planning and forethought out the window, and you just end up kind of going with your gut. But your gut changes all the time, and that's the thing. Evolution takes place in a far more subtle and unconscious way than just saying, okay, well, this is the band that we've been, and this is the band that we want to become. It's just that your life changes. And if you're writing songs that are an honest reflection of your life and the way your life has shifted from one way to another, then your music will evolve. Maybe not necessarily progress, but certainly it could be laterally as well. You know, It's just like, and I feel like this record is just sort of a step to the side of anything that we've done before.
Cool. Now this album is also the first album to be released under the name of the Sam Roberts Band. Can you tell me a little bit about that? Like what sort of decisions were made, or how that come about?
Well, it's been in the works for a long time, and I think if I look back at the way our records have been made, at the beginning, the first couple of records were really just myself in the studio, and the band part of it was a sort of I don't want to say limited, but for the stage and what happened on tour. But there was a bit of a disconnect between the two worlds. And right at about Chemical City, we went to Australia again, sort of took ourselves away from home and found ourselves there making a record that was very much unprepared, unwritten even. So I'd be writing, then I'd be taking it to the guys, and they were really helping me flush the ideas out. And then now it was all of us performing in the studio. And that relationship between the band and the music that we make has deepened over the years. And not to mention the fact that I think the touring and realizing how important, what we make on a record, how that translates to the stage, how important that is, has brought it to the point where I try not to think of them as two separate things as much anymore.
One entity.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool. So how the fans would you feel? Like, you've had a little time to kind of tour around with this album, particularly Collider. How have the fans reacted to it? Are they digging it, or what's up?
Yeah, it's been good. I think it's a pretty rhythmic record, and that's been an added element to the shows that I think's sort of helped to define this record as its, and this tour as its own thing, something pretty different from anything we've done before. And that you see just people, the rhythm of the song, the beat of the song makes people move differently. Right. And so now, rather than sort of, full speed ahead all the time, there are these moments where you sort of you allow the groove-oriented songs to come to the fore, and yeah, people, seem to be connecting with that. So,
all right, cool. Now, I understand that you have a relatively new member of your family.
I do, yeah.
I do. Can you tell us a little about that?
Well, I have an 8-month-old son now to add to our 2 daughters, so we've got a pretty full house.
Cool. What's it like to be the rock star kind of dad? How's that work?
I mean, I try not to make it part of our home life at all. They know that I play in a band, but to them it's very normal. They don't think of it as, and I don't live in a neighborhood where people sort of ogle, every time we walk down the street. It's not like that at all, especially in Montreal. I think Montreal is a really good place for that, and that people have a tendency, if anything, to sort of overcorrect on the other side. It's just like, I'm not going to acknowledge this whatsoever,
Cool.
So that's always helped keep us in check. And for my kids, it's just, they love music. I think partly as a result of this, partly as a result of that, I can make this such a big part of my life, that spills over to them as well. And that's something that I really want to encourage. The whole issue of stardom and fame is completely, hopefully it's a non-issue for them, but also just, secondary or subservient to music itself. And that's what I want to impart on them growing up.
It's a refreshing change from some of the stuff where they're saying with all these other little teen icons just being blown up on the screen. I think your approach is probably a little more wholesome, I'm going to say.
Well, I hope they play music. I really do. I'm not necessarily in a touring rock and roll band, but certainly that they get the benefit of playing music, the enormous benefit that it brought to my life, even before anything happened with the band. Just the fact that I could play an instrument. I think that saw me through so many times in my life where, you don't find answers anywhere else. Well, that was one of the things that I could always turn to. And I think it's important that anybody does it. So I definitely going to encourage my kids to pursue it. I'm going to force them to. That's my prerogative as a dad, for a while anyway.
That's really cool, man. So let's talk about the album cover here, Collider. What am I looking at here? What is this?
You're looking at a particle collision, the result of a particle collision from the Large Hadron Collider at the CERN facility.
Cool.
And that's basically, in my mind, the relationship anyway between that image and the music, or that image and the creative process, or why the record's called Collider in the first place, is that when you sit down to write a song, so many times it's really just the smashing together of ideas and the unexpected result of the creation of something that comes from that process. It's not always an exercise of thoughtful, intent. It's sometimes you take two things and just try for a moment to see if you can make something out of them together. And out of that accident, there's oftentimes born a song.
That's really cool.
So that's the thing, is you just have to leave yourself open to that happening when you sit down and write music. not just always go in with this very sort of structured focus and I think that applies to creativity in general. And I think it's as much a statement about the creative process, regardless of what you do. It's just being open to accidents taking the lead, and then being willing to follow them wherever they may be taking you, even if it's in the wrong direction sometimes.
Cool. Well, Sam, I think that's all I got for you. Thank you so much
My
for sitting
pleasure.
down with me.
Thanks
I
for
really
having me,
appreciate
guys.
it. Yeah.
Good luck.
Great. Thanks a lot. Back to you guys.